I'm Dr. Rusty Barrier, and
I'm Dr. Tricia Seymour.
And we're back here now to talk to you about the game of life. Tricia, what's the game of life all about? What is the game of life?
Well, many of you play video games, and I think one of the great analogies is to look at life as a video game. There's actually Dr. Nick Bostrom, I think that's how you say his name. He has a philosophy theory called simulation theory. I don't quite agree with him because he thinks somebody somewhere has a huge computer and they're kind of just watching us. But I think that as source, we're just activated this body and living through it.
And if you really want to think about it, the body, to me, is really a haptic interface device. You are spirit. You are soul. You are immortal. You are eternal. This thing that we walk around in is just that. It's an interface device we use to interact with this planet, with the third dimension, with materiality.
Right, so we can smell and taste and touch and have emotions and things that in oneness aren't differentiated the same way.
I think you could say that in oneness, nothing is differentiated. It's all one.
True. But if you look at it as a game, so many of you have played different kinds of games, video games. They're much more popular, of course, now than they ever used to be. And I think as we get into virtual reality, it's going to be even more so.
I agree.
Which, where you lose track of what's real and what's not. I knew someone as an acquaintance in college who actually, all of a sudden, I saw an ambulance taking her away on a stretcher, and she was tied down. And I didn't understand what happened. Well, she had been playing a game out in the woods, Dungeons and Dragons, which I have no problem with, but she lost track of what we would call reality versus fantasy. And she actually thought that someone in reality was coming to kill her, where instead it was actually the role she was playing in the game. And I think too often we get confused about what's real and what's the game.
And all the time we get confused about what's real and what's not. Basically, if you think about this, everything that you see outside of you is a projection from your own mind. You may say, there's a tree, and Trish might agree, that's a tree. But how I see that tree and how she sees that tree will be totally different. This is the game of life. It only exists inside your head.
Your perception.
Your perception.
Your perception actually creates what you see as reality. And it taints it, definitely.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So imagine, if you would, for a moment, that you're just a player in a game. That everyone around you is also just a player in the game. So if you do that, then the people who are after you in the game, you call them bad guys, but they might actually be the team that you're competing against. And they may be friends of yours, that you go out with for a drink afterwards. So good and bad take different connotations in a game. Winning and losing take different connotations in a game.
Levels take a different connotation in a game.
They do. And if you are a beginner in a game, things look usually level 1 is very simple. Things are very straightforward.
I do this happens, I do this happens. This is how I move forward through the game.
And in the spiritual game, we often think at that point that we don't have any control, that some other entity is in total control of everything, and we're just, happen to be here. But as you wake up a little more, and as you move up in these levels, you start seeing, maybe I create everything. Maybe I'm in charge of everything.
I create it all.
Right. Then intentions come in, and that works and everything.
Affirmations work. All the little things that you've been taught and appropriately so, that this is what you do to move forward. That's true, but only on that level of the game. What happens when you're just kicking along? All your spells are working, your affirmations are working, all the things that you do are working, and suddenly they don't anymore.
Wait, I used to be able to ask for a front row parking spot, and there it was, or money just showed up in my bank account, and there it was, and now it doesn't work. I used to hear things, and now I don't. Maybe you've moved to a different level. Because I think the next part, and as you keep moving up, you start realizing, I may be God, but I'm nothing without God, or source, or being, or universe, or whatever word you want to use, because that source is actually working through who I am.
So you mean at that level you begin to be a co-creator with source.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, let me diverge here just a second and talk about this. You are source. At your core essence, you are oneness. You have never left home. You're only wandering around in a haptic interface device in an imaginary game inside of a dream.
Yes.
Confused yet?
No, makes sense.
Yeah, perfect sense. So now, even though you are source, when you are inside this haptic interface device that we call a body, you are an individualized drop of source. But you're still source.
Right, and it's like the drop from the ocean, which you've heard people talk about before, except you never left the ocean. What people don't realize, and what a lot of people don't get, is that you're still at home. You're still completely source. And you're separate. In a way. In the game. Not separate as in ever left home.
And by the way, in the game, you and the guy you're shooting at, or that is shooting at you, or whatever the case may be, are the same. You're both source.
Right. Everything is. The Buddhists talk about this all the time, that you are everything, from a rock to a tree, and I think people can hear that, but they don't get that. They don't really understand that they're everything. What's interesting is we highly recommend that you find someone, whether it's a guru, a teacher, maybe even us, that you study with, because not that we're more, quote, advanced or whatever, but we've played those levels. So when you're playing a video game, you want to go to somebody who's already played level 1, 2, 3, 12, whatever, because they know where the tricks are. They know where the hidden amulet is under the rock, or the key that's behind the door, and they may be able to give you some shortcuts, so you don't have to stay fumbling around the level forever. You get that level and you move on. And again, level's hard to say because we're not talking about better than. We're just talking about a little bit farther down the path.
As a matter of fact, one of the best things that you can do in the game of life is actually forget better than, less than, smarter than.
Right.
Let go of all those duality labels. And that's the big difference that you're going to hear from us as we continue to talk, is the game of life is part and parcel in the realm of duality. There is black, there is white, there is right, there is wrong. In oneness, none of that and all of that exist. Now, I'm going to say something that the English majors out there will appreciate. In oneness, there is no subject-object relationship. There simply isn't.
And for the rest of us, what do you mean?
For the rest of you. I thought you had another doctorate
in
now.
English apparently. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, basically what I'm talking about for the rest of us is oneness. We're all one. There is no you, there is no me, there is no right, there is no wrong. It is simply, the Deepak Chopra refers to it as pure potentiality. And that's what it is. Everything exists, and yet nothing is manifest in oneness.
Right. And when we're here in our haptic interfaces, our suit, our body, we're participating in the game. And if you remember that you're in a game, and you remember that you really, I had somebody give an analogy once that Source fell asleep and is dreaming. And if you think of it as a dream or a game, it shifts what's important and what's not important. You know, and when you move through the levels and you get to the point where you understand this, I mean, truly get it, then you know that love is all there is and we're all one because we're all source.
We're all source. We also, when we remember that we're all source, we remember there are no victims. I'm going to say that again. When we remember that we are source, we remember there are no victims. Yes, stuff happens. Whether you choose to play in it or not is up to you.
Well, and I think that goes back to pain is inevitable. When you're in the game and when you play the game, crap's going to happen. Stuff that you wish didn't happen. You know, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. That means you don't have to stay in it. Yes, it happened. Yes, you experienced it. What did you learn from that? And how can you move on to help yourself, others, reconnect with oneness? How does that move you back through the game?
I don't know how.
I think that's kind of rhetorical. Those are the questions that we need to ask yourselves.
But you looked at me. Am I a rhetoric?
You might be.
Redundant, maybe, but
well, that's for sure. But those are the things that you ask, and you realize, much like this, you don't take it so seriously anymore. It's about fun. It's about play. It's about remembering and being childlike. It's about really seeing the awe and being in gratitude all the time.
Life, and the reason we come here is life is the most fantastic, delightful, awful experience you will ever find. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a haptic interface device that's called a body, a human body, or whether you are perhaps on some other planet in some other form. None of that matters. Inside of duality and inside the game of life, folks, everything can exist. Mm-hmm. If you can imagine it, it can exist. Mm-hmm. By the way, there's a hint there too. Imagine.
Mm-hmm. So, we're here as people who've been on different levels of the game, and we're here to help you navigate the levels of the game. We'll be making more videos as we go along, giving you more insights, helping you move through and navigate this game.
And by the way, do not believe a single thing we say. Try it. Right. If it works for you, keep it. If it doesn't, throw it in the trash. It makes no difference to us. It's you as source in your version of the game. Right. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.